Hi, everybody. I just clicked the recording button, and welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. By the way, it's Cinco de Mayo. Will.
It is.
It is. I just took a look. It's May 5th, and I'm with Will Schneider, who is the co-host and co-producer of Men Talking Mindfulness. And it is, there's so much to unpack and digest, and there's so many things. But Will is a New York City guy, transplanted, if I remember correctly, and he's into mindfulness and meditation and yoga and teaching, and I think you've been recognized as one of the top yoga instructors, and you can talk about that too. Sure. I had the wonderful thrill. It was a thrill for me to jump in on a podcast that you did with your co-host, John Macaskill, who is a former retired Navy SEAL, which is very impressive. And I don't know if you planned it that way by careful design, but you had me join in and listen to your last podcast with a sex therapist. Which was not really high on my list of things to do, but I did it, and I was thrilled with your podcast. It was so interesting the way you and John work or for guests. But there's so much to you, so I'm done with my monologue. And well, why don't you fill in the missing blanks of your bio and talk a little bit about yourself and the amazing things you do, and then we'll jump into a whole bunch of questions so people can understand.
Well, thank you, Cal. Yeah, well, thank you, Calvin. I appreciate you creating this space and us connecting and just having this opportunity to kind of talk about mindfulness, talk about my life a little bit, and really ultimately encourage people to take a look and a step into any of these ancient practices of mindfulness, meditation, or yoga, or whatever it is, in order to keep you happy and healthy. But yeah, I'm Will Schneider. I've been in New York for 17 years. Actually, originally moved here as an actor, and then the last 10 or 12 years, I've transitioned into this yoga, mindfulness, and meditation space, and I've been fortunate to teach at companies, at festivals, at all sorts of studios here in the city. And I was recognized in 2017 as one of the best yoga teachers in the city, which I didn't even know was happening. Wow. My students told me, they're like, oh my God, you might have heard of ClassPass. They're like, yo, you're like rated one of the top people in ClassPass. I'm like, oh. So yeah, so I've been in this space for a while. It's been really a joy to help all different types of students with yoga practices, but also with meditation and mindfulness, like I mentioned. And yeah, I don't know, like I think the question, the rest of my story will come out through our conversation, Calvin, and we'll go from there.
It'll come out. I should tell the viewers out there, we've been Zooming on and off, so this isn't one of these haphazard, quick put together. We've been talking for a long time, and we have these particulates of commonality in thought, action, and deed,
and food,
and I mean the whole package. Will's lifestyle very similar to my lifestyle, although I'm of an older generation. But anyway, specifically, Will, what do you do? Is that a good question?
Well, that's a good question, right? Well, I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher at my core. It took me a long time to realize that, because my father was a teacher. And I was like, I'm not gonna be like my dad. And then I realized as I began to teach, like I started like 11, 12 years ago, actually teaching the physical practice of yoga, that once I recognized I am a teacher, like my whole life kind of came into place. And so moving from teaching, yoga at studios or privately, or, I have a retreat company, which I would teach, take people away to like an exotic location and practice and hike and have all sorts of fun and get to know each other through a wonderful community. But then I've branched out, and I've wanted to bring these practices to more corporations. So pre-pandemic, I was working with several different companies like American Express, Victoria's Secret, and having my students that are in the studios with me open these doors for me to bring these practices like in, not even no yoga mat, no stretch pants, I like to say, when I would be marketing to these companies, but meeting them where they're at in the conference room and teaching them some basic principles of mindfulness, like breathing and meditation and some physical movement, in order to just hack into our biological brilliance, which we have on the inside. It's all there. We just need to cut away so much of the BS that gets in the way of our brilliance. And that's what these practices help do, because they really inspired and changed my life, and I've seen it inspire and change other people's life. So I guess I'm just like the facilitator to keep that rippling effect going. So,
okay. The next burning question, and I don't even know the answer, and I've been dabbling and circling around the word mindfulness. What is it?
Yeah. It's a good question. Like, a lot of people are like, what is mindfulness? What is mindfulness? And mindfulness at its most basic fundamental definition is just simply awareness. You go a little deeper, awareness to not, living moment to moment, mind, without judgment, without biases, and just being present and being aware, right? And that's it. Like, what mindfulness is, Calvin, for me, really boiling it down, it's an adverb for life. Life is what you live, right? Mindfulness is how you live. That's it. Like, that's at its core. It's like the modifier for how you do things. And in that work of mindfulness and being aware, there's practices like meditation, right? Which is a part of mindfulness, but not the same thing.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, how is mindfulness different from meditation?
Well, my meditation is like a specific mindfulness practice, right? And meditation, meditation is really just, it's a focusing practice, right? And meditation just simply means you're focusing on one thing as best you can, right, for a certain amount of time, and that's it. And that could be a mantra, that could be your breathing, that could be something with life and kindness, or working with gratitude. And mindfulness is like this broad area, like where, I could be very mindful about how I cook, or how I walk, or, how I'm doing things. Again, that adverb, that how. And mindfulness has its own practices as well. Like, I think it's very important to be present in the moment, because I'm not in my head. I'm not, lost in thought or the past or the future, but really being here. And why is it important to be here? Because we only live in the here and now. We don't live in the past. We can't live in the future. It's absolutely impossible. So we might as well get best at being here. And meditation is a focusing tool that helps you just become more mindful. And as you go deeper into a meditation practice, you become more aware of your feelings, of your relationships to yourself and to other people. As you go deeper, and also really your emotional life is a big part of all this, because at our core, right, we're emotional beings. We're not intellectual beings. We're emotional beings at our core, at our essence of being human beings. And all of these practices are going to help us to raise our EQ, our emotional intelligence. And if you could be more emotionally intelligent, it's been proven to create more success in all aspects of your life. What I like to tell companies is IQ gets you hired, EQ gets you promoted. And that's what these practices do. That's what these practices do. It's a big distinction. You can be a great, I look at it this way. You can be an absolute brilliant 1600 SAT person. Look at my grades, 4.0. But if you're an asshole to work with, no one's going to want to work with you. You're going to be stuck, right, in one place, because you don't know how to deal with people, because you have not been hacking in and looking at yourself. And that's, like, mindfulness just kind of turns the light of awareness on yourself. And if I can see how I am emotionally with myself, other people, circumstances, what triggers this, that, and the other thing, I can begin to change those relationships, change like my brain, filter the world in a different way. So I become more peaceful to myself, more peaceful to other people, and then therefore more productive and more passionate with everything else that I'm doing.
By the way, I've never done this before. I've done 63 interviews, but I just took notes of what you said. Congratulations. I wrote down, because I think it's unbelievable. IQ gets you hired, EQ gets you promoted. Wow. So I wrote that down.
Yeah.
I'm going to use it, and I'm a good
Please.
guy. I'm going to give you credit for it.
I stole it from someone. I don't even know who I stole it
Oh,
from,
all right.
from Calvin, but I mean, I heard it somewhere.
This
I'm
is
like,
a
wow,
first.
yes.
I
There
took
you
notes.
go. I'm glad I could be that person,
Yep.
Calvin.
I wrote you a little note on LinkedIn after I watched the podcast
Yeah.
with Courtney
Mhm.
Boyer. I actually took notes. And,
Yeah, I remember. Thank you.
yeah,
That's
and
it's awesome.
I don't necessarily need to take notes on those things anymore. I've kind of lived it all, but so be it. But the other thing you said, I wanted to make a quick comment because you kind of blew me away. You were talking about living in the now,
Yeah.
and I thought I was listening to Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
Power
Yeah.
of Now, which
Right.
I'm not a huge fan of self-help. I do it myself. I'm an old-fashioned guy, came out of the 60s, but it works. So what you do works.
Exactly.
It really works. So
And it works for everybody.
yeah,
If you're
it
gonna go,
works.
if you're gonna go there, it works for everybody.
How did you get into mindfulness and meditation and yoga, which you're now teaching? It's sort of kind of not a masculine. Is it a masculine journey necessarily?
It's my journey, and it could be a journey for anybody. And I think we'll talk in a little bit about why it's more difficult for men to kind of get into this space than women. And it really comes down to being emotional or knowing your emotions or being confined by a certain emotion or set of emotions instead of really being liberated and being with all of them. But I grew up in a very traditional family, small town, Pennsylvania. And just like, Hazleton, Pennsylvania is like 25, or maybe it's 35,000 people now or something like that. A lot of blue collar, family around me. My dad was a teacher, high school educator, and lots of aunts and uncles around me, and I just was like kind of given, this is how you live your life. Here is the prescription for life. Go at it, and have as much fun as you can. And so that's, I didn't, when you're young, you're just raised a certain way. You don't have a vote, you just do. So I was fortunate to be a wonderful athlete and excelled in essentially any sport that I put my mind and my body to. And those sports took me to college. I ended up playing basketball in college at King's, and I got went through school, got out of school with a biology degree in BS in biology, and entered the workforce. I'm just like, this is like what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to get a job, and then I'm going to retire at 65. Okay, here's my first job, or maybe this is my job for the next 30 years. Who knows? Just do it. And then it was about like 4 years into this job that, I started seeing and experiencing the glass ceiling. And I went for a promotion, and I got the promotion, and I couldn't, it was going to be 9 months until I actually got paid and recognized for this promotion. I'm like, why 9 months after it's been approved? They're like, oh, because it doesn't fit our budget. And I was like, the company made, $18 billion last year, and you can't give me my $4,000 raise, now, you know what I mean? Or something, whatever it is. Like, you kidding me? So, and around that same time, as I started like, whoa, what is really happening? I met this great woman, and we had a wonderful relationship, not very long, like 6 months. And that relationship ended. And that was the first time I fell in love, Calvin. And it just devastated me. And what I thought was the model of the world, it just completely shattered. And I was left like for months, like not knowing who I was, where I was going, what I was doing. I couldn't even, I was awkward, and I'm usually very, very good socially. I just couldn't even be in a conversation. I was just so devastated, and have this hole in my heart. And what really helped me put things back together, what really did help me help me get things back together and help me put my first foot on my path, was this great book called The Artist Way by Julia Cameron. Artist Way by Julia Cameron. And it's more of a workbook than just a read. It's something that takes place over like 12 or 15 weeks. I was just journaling every day and going through exercises, and she started to kind of tear down over this amount of time, like these constructs that of who I was, and started to fill them in with who I could be. And not, not telling me who I should be, but just offering opportunities or suggestions or questions. And then I decided through all of this work I was doing journaling that, you know what, I need to start creating, I need to start expressing myself creatively. Because I was always rewarded for, I get my intelligence and my physical ability. I never really accessed my creativity because it's never my family. It was just nobody around me was doing whatever. So I ended up taking acting classes.
Wow.
And that just swooped me up for like 10 years, from like age 28 till I was about like 36, 37. I, was in Philadelphia with that first job I had, moved to New York in 2003 with this passion. And it's funny, like as I started to pursue my life, they talk about, I'm sure you've heard of synchronicities, how things begin, right?
Oh, sure.
Well, all that stuff started to happen. As soon as I started living through my heart instead of my head, right? And moving forward with this like kind of heart energy and just be like, this is who I am. All of a sudden doors started opening up everywhere. I had no idea that someone that married into my family lived in New York City with her family like years ago. Apartment opened up. So took the apartment, 6 months later, moved here, was in the acting world for quite some time, had an agent, was on every single soap opera here in New York, like with speaking, with speaking roles and stuff like that. Did a lot of theater, did some commercials, and then and then the economic book. I started practicing yoga seriously in 2006 and 7 is when I started. Like, I just wanted to. Yoga was still really dead, and not dead. It was just not. It was still very even new to New York. There might have been like 8 studios in the city at that time, maybe 10, right? Whereas just at the end of the pandemic, there was like 250 in New York alone. I mean, just that many, right?
Wow.
I mean, just over a 10-year cycle, like that many, that's how popular yoga became. But I started like practicing and feel my body in a different way. And, I really enjoyed the challenge because I've always enjoyed physical challenges because of all my athletic pursuits, as a younger man. And it just really started to change me in ways that I had no idea was going to change me. And then I decided, because of this change and this constant inspiration that I was feeling, I was like, they offered a teacher training. I'm like, I'm going to go teach. And I got lucky to teach right away, right after my first training. I finished that in 2009. And because I'm a guy and typically an all female space, I started teaching right away. And I'm a straight guy in all this space too. And I'm a big guy, I'm 6'3". So I started teaching, and it was just incredible to teach. And at the time I was teaching at a studio that would get packed with like 50 and 60 students. I was like teaching to large audiences instead of like 5 people. I had like a massive crowd of people, that were practicing together. And then I just kept going. I had no idea the gifts I had as a teacher, because I was just like in this limited space. But then as I kept going to different studios and getting recognized as somebody that people really wanted to practice with, it just kept growing and growing and growing. And it's changed. I'm in, the corporations. I have my own virtual studio now with the pandemic. I'm teaching outdoors. I'm teaching at different companies virtually, and I'll go back to the office when I need to. I've done retreats. I had the Yoga Adventure company that I started, another male teacher here in the city back in 2014. And we were like in Mexico, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Nicaragua, upstate hikes and stuff like that. So it's been quite an incredible adventure, Colin, to do all this work and have so much fun doing it.
You briefly touched and briefly mentioned, how does it feel being a man in a space that's typically a woman's space?
Mm-hmm.
Yoga.
How's that feel?
Yeah.
I mean, I have no problem with who I am and being a man either. I mean, it's just like these practices are for everybody. just because typically or most often, and women know about these things and pursue these things, doesn't mean it's just for women.
Okay.
You know, I really love like being this a different voice or a different energy in a lot of ways. And because a lot of teachers are also gay men. Like, I mean, no, like I don't no problem with my gay brothers. Like, I love them too. But there's just something different about really a heterosexual man, like being in this space. And, you know, there's been times where, you know, of course I've been made fun of with my family or this or that or whatever, but it's like, you know, I've got tough enough because of acting, you know, all these auditionings and doing this, you get a tough skin. It's just like, whatever, I did the best I could, you know, what's next? You know? And so, yeah, I mean, it's like, I feel actually very lucky. And it's actually probably created a lot more opportunities for me, you know, being a man in a space that is really consumed by women and teachers as well, not just students, but still to this day is great. It's changing, but my just you know, last March or March 2020, like my class were still like 85% women.
Wow.
You know, more men would come, but it was still like a great majority of, there's very few times, Calvin, and I'm talking smaller classes, maybe like 20 students, where men dominated or had more men in the class than women. And that's just been going on for like that for years. And I'm trying to change that, you know.
Why are you helping men?
Because growing up, and this is like I learned a lot more about like kind of the language or to talk about how men and because men are suffering. We're suffering a lot with these hyper masculine values that have just been fed to us. And I was a byproduct of it. I mean, I have two brothers that are byproducts of that, you know, and I see, you know, I love you, Chris and Todd, but I see them suffering tremendously. You know, with it, and because it's a very frustrating way to live, very frustrating when your only rewards are rewarded for being angry or defensive or tough or aggressive, right? And then thought of being as weak for being vulnerable, authentic, kind, patient. You know what I mean? And it's like, but we have all these, you know, coming back to that biological brilliance, like it's all in there. It's all in there. And when you begin to access all of that brilliance, it's like so many, I mean, I'm feeling that it's just so many things start to change, you know, my relationship to myself, to other people. And you know, and I would love to help more men understand it's okay to be yourself. And because I think a lot of problems we have in the world is because of this. People call it toxic masculinity. Yes, it's toxic to society. It's toxic to the soul of man. It's not like men are by nature toxic at all. No way. I mean, I know I'm a great man. I know I'm a loving man. I'm not toxic. I have moments, I guess, that I can get really frustrated or something like that and be toxic, but it's not our nature. It's just like, it's just the box that we've kind of been put in because of the reward system of the society that we live in. So yeah, so that's why I'm helping more men, because I just want to see more peace and more love and more kindness, and all of that peace, love, and kindness just helps us advance into society that we can be, instead of it being so restricted.
Off topic.
Sure.
I like asking this. So here's the quick scenario, one word answer, and you don't have to answer. But living your dead, excluding family or friends, who'd you like to spend a day with?
Wait, said living in what? Living
or dead, excluding family or friends, who'd you like to spend a day with? And you may come up with a couple of different names.
The top of my head, I would love to Martin Luther King.
Great.
I would love to oh God, I can't think of his name. The South African Nelson Mandela.
Yep.
Nelson Mandela. God, if I could sit with the Buddha, would be great. I mean, just Gandhi,
Yep.
I think just these great men that have,
Peace.
or somebody like, I would love to sit with like Rabindranath Tagore, the great poet, or sit with Rumi, and just absorb his wisdom, or just, I'm thinking about it, I'm getting all like teared up just to sit with that Sufi knowledge, like, anybody, I guess, that
Well, I see a
has,
theme here, peace.
people, peace and love, but not just for self, for everybody else.
Oh
too.
yeah, it's peace
You know
for
what I
all
mean?
of us.
Right. But they had to find it in themselves first, in order to really begin to bring other people to peace. It all starts here.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you. That's a great question, Calvin.
Wow. Well, it's very revealing.
Yeah.
So, all right, moving on. So,
Yeah.
what is the your podcast, Men Talking Mindfulness? It's a live podcast and can be seen on your sites. But what is the purpose of that?
Well, it is. We shoot it live, but then we also rip the audio and then put it in podcast format. So it's both. So we're like, Men Talking Mindfulness came out of a connection through LinkedIn, through John, my co-host. Like I actually never met my co-host physically in person. Like he is like one of my best friends. I love you, John. If you're listening, he's a great man. We got, I started getting invited to do men's work, like actually invited to teach men these practices, not really in pursuing it, starting back in like 2014, 15. And I did an all men's retreat in Bermuda with like 35 other men. I was part of a core of like 8 teachers. I was also participating when I wasn't teaching. We had 35 of us from all across the country that came to Bermuda. And I met this one guy, Scott Tucker. I love this guy. He's a West Point grad and, traveled all over the world and, was in the military. And his mission has been on LinkedIn to connect as many military veterans as he possibly can and help them, to transition very effectively out of the military. One of the people that came into Scott's pursuit was John Macaskill, my co-host and friend and co-producer of Men Talking Mindfulness. And we just started connecting over mindfulness. We just started talking like every month. Hey, what's going on? How's this book? Or what are you reading? What are you doing? We just started talking. It was just like the summer of 2019. Great guy. I really enjoyed talking to him and look forward to our conversations every month. And pandemic hit. My life has changed dramatically in New York. So instead of teaching at studios and other places, I was like teaching virtually. I started doing Instagram lives and this and that. And he's watching me do this. And one day he sends me a message or a phone call. He's like, yo, I see you doing all these live classes. He goes, why don't we do something live together? And I was like, all right, that'll be fun. And we started talking about it in that one phone call. And in that same phone call, we're like, all right, let's call it Men Talking Mindfulness. And we started on Instagram live back in, it was like right now, I think it was like May right now. I got to check. It might be May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, eat a taco. I think that's what you're supposed to do, right? Or have a beer. I don't know. It's like, it's like St. Patty's Day, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound rude or racist or anything like that. I'm just not sick of I'm an Italian, Irish, and a German American, No,
I think that's what it is.
Anyway, we started just going live on Instagram, talking about particular pieces of mindfulness, trying to using an educational platform to bring in men and all people to do this. And then it was, I forget when exactly, but we decided to turn it into a podcast, like, maybe August or September of last year. And we're on our 2nd season right now. And it has been, I think it's like what all this work I've done up until now. I think it's just like everything I've done with, even the acting stuff and everything I lived before was for this moment with the podcast, because I'm teamed up with a great man and also somebody that is like kind of the epitome of the American gladiator. you know, and to have him talk about mindfulness and to have him, and we set up the dichotomy of the show. It's like, you know, a retired Navy SEAL, hippie meditation teacher in New York. It's
Right.
like, you know, like, can we be any, you know, different? Right. And this is how the show began. And it's been wonderful to bring all different types of topics and different aspects of mindfulness to, you know, now we have over 3,000 listens on our podcast platform.
Fabulous.
Which is great.
Fabulous.
Thanks. Yeah. I'm really helping people, really helping people. We get comments and text messages and emails and private messages saying like, oh my God, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, from men and women, mostly men, you know, really opening up. And, you know, John got a message and we saved this guy's marriage. He goes, because of your conversation about, I think it was on the gratitude, you know, we did a power of gratitude episode. He goes, I got the courage and the confidence to have a conversation with my wife that I needed to have for months or years. And we were so close to dissolving this marriage.
Wow.
And this changed everything. So that right there keeps us moving. That's like, John sent me that message. He goes, we're doing this show forever. And I'm like, great, because I want to do it too.
You know, there's an old saying, I think it comes from the Bible, and just listening to what you just said made me think of it. But he who saves a life saves the world.
Wow.
That's what you just said. Well,
yeah.
Saving this guy, you know, you save the world. It's a wonderful saying. Truly,
I'm so humbled, because I mean, I struggle with, Calvin, sometimes, like the power of this podcast. You know, struggle in the sense of like, really, I'm really having this impact. Because sometimes I play a low profile. I have self-doubt issues, to be honest, in some ways. So I don't feel like, oh yeah, that's okay. That's okay. That's no big deal. And I think it actually keeps me humble too, which is, it keeps me digging for more, which I think is important as well. But
what you did with that guy, it makes it all worthwhile.
Every time,
correct.
It's like after every episode, each of us will get several messages, some token of thanks or some epiphany that they've had. You know, we even have private donors that just give us money every month to keep the show going.
That's even, I don't know what that word is. Someday maybe we can have a little chat. That's the M word, I call it, the 5-letter M word, MONEY. I look it up all the time on dictionary.com, trying to understand it. Anyway, that was a little subtle humor.
Okay. I said the N word. I was like, what N word? And I was like, I'm glad you said it's 5 letters, right?
Yep. MONEY.
Yeah, money. Yeah.
And actually, there was a movie that it was about New York City. Oh gosh, with Dustin Hoffman. I'm having a brain freeze, but there was a sign outside Nick Nolte's. Wasn't MONY? It was Mutual of New York.
Oh right.
And so anyway, I'm drifting. Let's get back.
Sure.
Beginning and the end of your podcast, you do kind of a grounding practice, which I saw. How did that? What is it, and how did that come about? You know, with the breath. Yeah,
with the breathing. Well, let me ask you, Calvin. You managed to get to the, you know, you're late to the podcast because of my fault. But so, what was that grounding practice like at the end? Did you stick around?
I got late. I got there, you know, 15, 20 minutes into it, but I did see the 4-second breathing in, holding, and exhaling.
Yeah, that was at the end, right? Yeah, yes. Yeah. What was that like for you? Yeah, what was that? Was that
hard? I liked it, and actually, you'll take my confession. I did it once since the other day.
There you go. Right. Okay. There you go.
Yeah.
That's what we're getting at. At. Like, we use this grounding practice. Well, I think it's like we use it because the platform is an educational tool, right? I mean, and that's the way that we kind of put out the table, set the table, and everyone else brings what they need, you know, or you know, and it's a vehicle. And we know that and it's been proven, or just like you had the experience with it, like simple breathing practices, even in a small amount of time, have a massive effect in our biology, and all of our biology. And these practices help us to get more in touch with and in tune with and access and unleash more of this biological brilliance I'm talking about. So we teach different practices, or maybe it's the same practice, or you know, you'll see several times, but it's just as a tool of like, hey, and we tell everybody every time, it's like, you don't, you know, do this here, but ultimately we're trying to get you to do this out there when you're not listening to podcasts, when you are feeling anxious, stressed, or something like that, or need to up your energy or something like that. We have different breathing practices that can help you do that. And we also give people a little, it helps to sync the show, helps to calm me down, calms John down, because we're going live and we're nervous and amped up and excited, you know, and really enthusiastic about doing the show and all this. And it's just a great, it's also, I feel really important. I think it's important for the show to have like pillars, you know, within the show. Like we have an intro, we have a breathing practice. We usually do every week when we don't have a guest, we do a mindfulness moment of the week. So we just talk about one way that we've experienced mindfulness in our lives for that week, whatever that could be. It could be in a relationship, it could be your own work. But yeah, so that's why we do the breathing practices, just to teach and ground the show and help people.
So you've taken so many different elements that you're learning this grounding. Any other particles that you're learning from doing this podcast show?
Well, yeah, we're learning a lot. We're learning a lot about men. You know, because we do a lot of research for the show. Like we're reading, you know, we have the guests, and we have guests with usually authors on, or we do have authors. We have had many authors on, or not many, like 3. And so we get to read their books, and we get to, you know, they're more of an expert than we are because they're dove in, and then we get to bring them on and talk about different aspects of mindfulness. And, you know, some of the big things I'm learning is a lot of people need help. You know, there's a lot of people that can use these skills and these practices in order to live more fulfilling lives. You know, there's obviously a lot of education around presenting the podcast and hosting it and marketing and stuff like that, but I don't want to bore everybody with that. I mean, it is fun. You know, I definitely have more equipment. I got a microphone and everything else, you know.
So do I. Look at that.
Yeah, we both got the Yeti, bro. We both
yeah. We got the same one.
Cheers.
By the way, that means a lot. We're on the
go.
same mic.
I love it. There you go. The Yeti Blue is a great mic.
It's a great. I thank my son Neil. He gave it to me as a gift.
Great mic. He's a great son for bringing it. I love this mic for everything. We Zoom so much. We're learning a lot about masculinity on the show, and what keeps us stuck, what will liberate us. We're really learning and understanding the power of vulnerability on the show, authenticity, it within the show, not just the concept of it, but within the show, and how that helps us to just, I mean, it's just raw. We Sarah shows raw, uncut, and unapologetic, because we don't know what's going to happen necessarily. We have a topic, we do our best we can to research it, and we just boom, live is live. You know, we don't cut anything out. We just do it.
Correct.
And it's just like, I'm learning so much about myself. I'm learning how to be a better speaker, how to also begin to talk about these concepts in a very specific way. We talked earlier pre-show, Calvin, about communication, how important communicating is. And so I'm trying to pull away a lot of the fluff and get to the essence. And then also questioning, like, you know, questioning, you know, a sex therapist and a relationship therapist, like and also thinking, but not about myself, yes, but also, you know, thinking of the audience that's watching. We had our largest live audience on Friday. We had almost over 40 people on live, just live. I mean, that's awesome. You know, and people are putting questions in. So we're learning a lot about our audience. We have a Facebook group now, you know, that we're using as another tool to just keep the conversation going and keep trying to help men, which I'm sure will turn into a meditation circle. We're actually practicing meditation together. So yeah, it's been incredibly on a selfish perspective, just so rewarding and so much fun. And I love the creative side of it because, we're always digging for a little bit more to help just more men in many different ways. And we just see a really, really, really bright future with the show. And
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what's next for Men Talking Mindfulness.
I was going to ask you that, but before I ask you that,
Yeah.
specifically, if you had to, but I wanted to make an editorial comment.
Please.
Because I've been a little bit of a student of the pandemic. I made a lot of observations about it, but and I've interviewed now a number of people involved in mental health, and this is actually Mental Health Awareness Month. What you're doing falls under that banner.
Absolutely.
And the editorial comment I wanted to make for what you're doing with Men Talking Mindfulness is never before in the history of mankind, in our, at least the past century, has so much been going on with this thing up here. We've had an entire planet locked in their houses for 12, 13, 14 months. So this is going to be unfolding and unpacking for many, many, many years to come. And people, both genders, are going to need more help and guidance and support. So you are, in my opinion, listening to you, knowing you, are in such a wonderful, amazing position to do such good, because people are going to need it. And as we discussed before we went on air, sometimes people don't know how to ask for help or seek it out, and you're giving it to them. Right. So you really are in a position that's going to keep you very, very busy for a very, very long time. And thank you.
No, I think, yeah. And I think the podcast is a little easy. It's like you can listen to anytime you want, and then maybe you'll meditate or go for a walk or take a big breath a few times a day. It's an easy entry point to mindfulness. And thank you, Calvin. Like we're also learning is how needed this is.
Yeah.
Because in order for this podcast to excel so quickly, I mean, we're approaching, one of our episodes or a couple of them being listened to 200 times, so it's not like we're huge yet, but the future of this is like, I mean, we can just feel the energy that's coming and every week more and more and more. And we're like ending season 2 next Friday. John's going to have a child. He's going to have his 3rd child end of May and beginning of June. And then we're going to start season 3 in June, July. And we're going to have an incredible, I cannot wait for season 3, but we're just having, and honestly, the biggest, but we're having fun. We're making it fun. We're having fun. I mean, we laugh on the show all the time, because why should we take any of this work seriously? Yeah. So it's like, thanks, Calvin. Like, you're right. Like, we're hitting this at exactly the right time. And I feel it's the right two beings coming together.
You bet. You are in such a wonderful place. And maybe we'll look back at this. I like to think of myself, I would like to think of myself as a little bit of a visionary.
Yeah, man. I agree with that.
But what you're doing and everything I've seen and observed, and all the people I've talked to and interviewed, a lot of mental health issues. Yeah.
Well, I mean, speaking of that, Calvin, the mental health stuff, it's like, we're realizing that the drug culture we have, the pharmaceutical drug culture I'm talking about. I mean, it's like 70% of all Americans are on one drug, 30-some% are on 2 different medications. Right. And a lot of these problems, health problems, physical problems, which affect mental affect physical, and emotional, are all wrapped up in that as well. A lot of this stuff can be solved and taken care of by just meditating, going for a walk, 10,000 steps a day, drinking more water. You know what I mean? Like getting out of your house, detaching from your technology. Like a lot of these problems, anxiety and stress that lead to panic attacks, that lead to this, that, and other problems, like can be solved by these simple practices that have been around for thousands of years. And we need to be reminded.
Right there. I think the last 2, by the way, so I said this before he went on air, I'm saying again, we're friends, I'm loyal. You can always come back to my forum and express
Thank you.
yourself. I think we
Yeah.
really have another show to talk about meditation, because
Oh my God, please. I would love to. I talk about meditation all day long.
I mean, we really should. I don't want to go. I mean, listen, I could sit and listen to you.
Yeah, same,
But
Calvin.
it just hit me. The light bulb went off, the incandescent light bulb, that you should come back and talk more about meditation, because it really is an unknown for so many people.
Yeah.
So to kind of do a rap, isn't that a theatrical term?
Yeah, well, that's like a TV term. It's like that's a wrap, like meaning
Okay.
like wrap. You mean everything is done.
All right.
Show's done. That's a wrap. Yeah,
All right.
that's more television. Where theater is like,
Okay.
I forget the terms anyway.
Whatever. So, but anyway, to do a wrap, I'm just gonna say that this has been so. I'm just so glad I met you, and I forgot how and where. And it was
Michael Turner.
yeah,
Boy, Michael Turner.
who
Yeah.
I was emailing Michael Turner last night at 2 a.m. He was hooking me up with a young woman in Singapore, because this is my second season, and I had hoped to kind of cross a couple of oceans, and I'm doing that.
Yeah.
So God love Michael. He's been so great, and so he just sent me a message. I was reading, and I had to jump into our interview, so that's how we met. So come back. I can't
Please.
thank you enough for your time, in your graciousness, and I am full of gratitude. You just used that word, for you being here and sharing this, and sharing you and your work, because it's illuminating. So finally, how can people? I mean, I'm going to put it here, but how can people find you?
Well, first I want to extend my gratitude, Calvin, for this opportunity, this platform, and it's great to connect with you and help your community as well. And thank you everybody for listening that's out there. And you guys can find me. Easiest way to find me is willnotfear.com. So Will is my name, Will, Notfear, willnotfear.com. All my social is handle at willnotfear. mentalkingmindfulness.com if you want to just hack into the show. mentalkingmindfulness.com. And I have meditation classes, virtual yoga classes. If you're in New York City, I teach outdoors on the waterfront in Battery Park, which is beautiful. A couple days a week. And I would love to connect with anybody that's out there. The podcast is growing. Get involved now. It's been a lot of fun. A lot of people have been enjoying the ride. We've gotten all these comments and stuff because the work is solid. And we enjoy having more people on the show. So that's how you can find me. Everything Will Not Fear, or Men Talking Mindfulness. So thanks.
So be well, be safe, be good. And when you'll come back, talk about medicine. I'm here.
I'd love to.
I'm here. Would love to have you come back, because you've been transformative. I've learned a lot, and that's what we're here for. So once again, thank you, Will, and to be continued.
Yes. Thank you, Calvin.